So I started to pick up the Dapple Dualies again for two reasons. One, I'm going for 5-star vanilla Dapples, and two, I'm starting to work on a full Dapple Dualies guide, so I'm going to be playing the weapon a lot in preparation for that. But anyway, I've been using the weapon a lot recently, and all I have to say is, man, they did this weapon dirty, and they continue to treat it dirty. How has this thing not received any substantial buffs yet? Okay, yeah, it got one minor frame buff a few patches ago. I promise you that barely did anything. Today's video is just going to be me kind of talking about the Dapple Dualies and what I think of their place in the game's meta. While everything I'm going to talk about in this video is just my personal opinion, I have heard a lot of top-level competitive players say the exact same things, so this isn't exactly uncommon knowledge. Before we get started, I'd really appreciate if you guys hit the like button and also considered subscribing. Our goal is 30,000 subs by the end of the year, and if we hit it, I have something very special planned. Also, leave a comment down below on what you think of Dapple Dualies' current state in the game. I think it's pretty obvious that the Dapple Dualies' main drawback is its range. The weapon just struggles to get anything done against good players because it doesn't really have any way of getting in other than sharking around and hoping an enemy doesn't notice you. This can be effective in a solo setting, but in competitive and even higher level X battles, it's very hard to do this successfully. So what we're all probably thinking is, why don't they just buff the Dapple's range? Well, one thing to keep in mind is that Nintendo needs to be very careful with the Dapple Dualies and how exactly they buff it. Because yes, right now it's a bottom tier weapon, but just one or two decent buffs could instantly transform it into a top tier. The reason for that is that if you just put aside the range, Dapple Dualies are actually a pretty insane main weapon. It has the second fastest fire rate in the game, it's a 3-shot kill, it has pretty good paint, it's accurate, and its mobility is insane. In fact, this is definitely going to surprise some of you, but I'm willing to say that sometimes, Dapples feel easier to fight with than Tetras. Yes, the range is a major drawback, but slaying with it and taking advantage of its speed just feels so much better sometimes. I think its fast fire rate, accuracy, and damage definitely contribute to this, in contrast to Tetra, which is worse in all of those aspects. Now, don't get me wrong, Tetra is the better main weapon, no doubt, but Dapples just feels so fun and rewarding sometimes. It makes me feel a way that no other weapon does. And that's why this weapon makes me so sad, because I feel like there's so much potential there that just needs a tiny little boost to be unlocked, but Nintendo just won't give in. Hypothetically, let's say Nintendo does decide to finally give this weapon a notable buff. Let's discuss what they could do. As I mentioned before, giving this thing a range buff is something that they need to be very careful with. I think they could give it a slight range buff, but it should still be bad. That's what makes Dapples Dapples. But how it is right now, it's just not long enough to do anything. So I think a tiny range buff, maybe just by 5% or so, could be great for the weapon's balance. To be honest, in terms of other small buffs, I can't really think of anything else they could do for the weapon. There are some big buffs I can think of, but these are pretty unrealistic since they would be altering an entire property of the weapon. First, I think Dapples would really benefit from having their dodge roll end lag completely removed. Just like the Dualie Squelchers, the weapon would continuously slide after a dodge roll rather than being stuck in place. Dapple's end lag after a roll is already pretty good, but giving it the ability to completely remove it would truly take its mobility to the next level. The next one is even more unlikely. Give the Dapples a third dodge roll. This would help out quite a bit, as Dapples currently cover the least amount of distance out of every Dualie's dodge roll. Even though it can roll really quickly, the small distance makes retreating or rushing an opponent down pretty difficult. I know that some of you are thinking that these buffs are ridiculous, and I know that. These are never going to happen, at least not in Splatoon 3. But hey, you gotta let us Dapple users dream a little bit. We suffered for so long. The last thing I'll cover are the Dapple Dualies' current kits. They're not great. The vanilla Dapple Dualies have a good kit on paper, with Beacon and Tacticooler, but they just don't mesh well with the aggressive main weapon. And the Dapple's Nouveau kit wouldn't be that bad if Reef Slider was just a better special. It would also be better if the Dark Tetra Dualies didn't exist, because that kit is literally just a better version of the Dapple's Nouveau. If we get a third Dapples kit in this game, I really hope Nintendo will listen to the fans and give it a lethal bomb. Even if they decide to never buff the main weapon, giving it a bomb that can consistently one-shot opponents would make using the main weapon so much better. What I'm really trying to say with all of this is that making the Dapple Dualies a better main weapon wouldn't be hard. I'm not sure if Nintendo is scared of the weapon being too good or something, but I think we've waited long enough now. The weapon deserves a chance to shine. So please Nintendo, from the bottom of my heart, buff this weapon. Or at least give it a third kit. Just something.